Welcome, welcome everyone to our third installment of the Rising Leadership series. I am back with the awesome Jenny Kiely. We are collaborators, friends, colleagues, and my name is Lynn Hord. Jenny is works with rising leaders herself and really supports them to step into greater levels of visibility, deepen into their work. And she's really here for people who do big visions in the world, have big visions of what they want to create in the world. So she's an incredible soul leadership coach, if that's something that you are looking for right now. And as I said, I'm Lynn Hord, and I am a copy queen, and I also support rising leaders in the world and with their marketing and their messaging and their alignment in business. So we are here. If you haven't caught the first two installments, we got together because we really wanted to talk about what does it mean to be a rising leader in this day and age, in this new era, in the current paradigm where it's very much around stepping into our feminine leadership, feminine energy, feminine way to do business. And we've already done, as I said, two installments, and the second one was all around the milestones that we move through as we expand into greater soul leadership. Definitely recommend going and having a look at that, because it will be illuminating for you, both to see where you are, but also what's going to be the next step for you. So I loved that, Jenny. I thought that was so juicy, that episode.
Oh my God, Lynn, it went into so much detail and so much juice. I think it will be the foundation of a lot of what we work in our lives and in our collaborations moving forward.
Honestly, it's so valuable, because that could be a training. It was really super juicy and detailed. So definitely go and watch the second video, wherever you'll find it. It'll be up above or below. So one of the things that we talked about, we wanted to come back and talk to you about today, is around, all right, so we've given you this milestone, you've got this framework of what it would look like to keep moving into and expanding into greater soul leadership, but what are the qualities that we need to cultivate within ourselves in order to support that movement, that expansion, right? Because it's not just about the practical steps, is it, Jenny?
Definitely not. Definitely not. Lynn, you have to take the action.
You have to take the action. So we've
Mm.
just sat and had to think about what are some of the key things we really wanted to express to you today. And we wanted to talk to you about the idea of authenticity. Now, don't roll your eyes. I know a lot of people go, oh, God, it feels so elusive, that authenticity thing. But we're going to get into some detail around that. So we wanted to talk to you about, why do we want to be authentic, more authentic? What does it mean? What does that mean to be more authentic? But also talk about what's the connection to vulnerability. Because the truth is, friends, if we want to be more authentic, we kind of need to be more vulnerable. Yes, I know. Roll your eyes again. I certainly have. Don't worry. I'm speaking for myself right now. And then the third piece in there is being courageous, right? Because if we want to be more authentic, we need to be vulnerable. And we can't be more vulnerable if we're not willing to be courageous and reveal more of ourselves. So that's what we're up to today. Does that sound good to you, Jenny? That's what we're talking about today?
Absolutely, Lynn. Right on the edge. Right on the edge.
Yeah, right on the edge. And we're going to give you some examples as well from our own lives, just so you can see in real action, right? We don't want this to be just conceptual. We really want you to go, oh, yes, I see what that looks like, and then what that requires from me in terms of the qualities. So that's what we're talking about today. All right. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about authenticity, and then Jenny's going to give you a little bit about vulnerability, and then we're going to share our stories. So look, if you are a soul leader and you identify as that already, or a rising leader, you'll understand why authenticity is so important, because our soul is always calling us to reveal more of who we are, to show up as who we are, to let go of the things that no longer are who we are, right? So we're talking about, stop being the the good girl, right? Stop dimming our voice, stop putting other people's needs before our own, like to the detriment of our own. All of those conditioning pieces, right? They're all being right now. Wouldn't you agree, Jenny? Like right now in this current era, we're being asked to like let go of them like waterfall as quickly as we can, so that we can reveal our authentic essence, as I like to call it. Um,
Mm.
and the really interesting nugget, and I'm going to actually ask you as well, Jenny, like if you want to add anything, but the really interesting nugget I learned about authenticity just last year was that there's
Mm.
been a study done about authenticity, the energy of it. And in the study, they were able to figure out like, what does that actually really mean? And authenticity means expressing your truth, right? So
Mm.
expressing your real truth from your heart, but actually believing in it, right? So when we
Mm.
and I shared an example earlier with Jenny, it's like if you say to someone, "Oh, you look really beautiful in that dress," right? That's an authentic expression. What makes it authentic is that you also really believe it. So truth plus
Mm.
belief equals
Mm.
authenticity. And the thing about
Mm.
that, it makes us magnetic. It also makes us incredibly unique, because when
Mm.
we're being authentic, we are sharing our authentic essence, like our soul essence, and no one
Mm.
has one like you. Everyone has a different one, my friends. So, Jenny, I've talked a lot right now. So, please, what would you add to that idea about authenticity or why we want to be more authentic?
Oh, I love the fact that you added the belief piece, Lynn, because for
Mm,
me, expression of our essence is the embodiment of our essence. And we have to embody it. We got to believe it, right? We got to believe the
mm,
how we walk in the world, yeah, is sharing and expressing our authentic self. So for me, authenticity is, I think it's the greatest gift that in feminine leadership that we can now offer the world. When we shed that good girl, when we know that we cannot live the old paradigm ways, that to be on that edge of authenticity, we gotta really get comfortable with vulnerability, like with knowing
mm,
our own authentic essence, being number one true to ourselves, like being intimate with ourselves and our own truth.
mm,
Yeah. And once that becomes embodied, and once we believe that, Lynn, we embody that, it then becomes like a natural expression out into the world. It becomes a new way that we create how we lead, how we show up, how we relate in relationships.
mm,
And I really feel that when we can be on the edge of vulnerability and start to express that then we kind of, I suppose, we start to bring in new ways of being in the world. We start to bring in new ways of creating community, of creating,
mm.
our beautiful artistry and how we show up. So they're all interlinked. Do you think like they're all those interlinked? Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And I would really love you to just talk a little bit more about the vulnerability piece and why
Mm.
we need, why vulnerability is so linked to us being more authentic in our lives and businesses.
Oh my God, like vulnerability is the birthplace of connection, right? It's the
Mm,
absolute root and birthplace of connection. And what is it that we're creating and being in the world is like that desire to feel love, to feel belonging, to feel connection, right?
mm,
And to feel connected as soul leaders or rising leaders is super important. And to be on that edge of vulnerability, it's a muscle that we actually really strengthen along the way. It's become more resilient in sharing our
mm,
authenticity. But if we are not repeatedly on the edge of our vulnerability, we're not alive, right? We're actually not feeling the ripples of like the old leaving our bodies, and we're
yeah.
not downloading the actual, our content or our essence, and we're not embodying that.
Mm,
So vulnerability, it's, as you said, it's an eye roll moment, right? But it is something that if we want connection, if we want to embody our essence, if we want to believe in what it is that we have to offer, we got to get
Mm.
comfortable with that vulnerability piece. Yeah, I think we've both had many of those moments in our life, Lynn, which we'll share
We
one or
sure
two of them.
have.
But yeah, we really have.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Mm,
I think, listening to what you just said, it's the connection piece. Like, if we were to give somebody a reason as to why do you want to be vulnerable and reveal more of your authenticity, your authentic self, it is because of that true and pure connection that is
mm,
allowed through that state of being. And it's so vulnerable because we are revealing who we really are. And for all of us, that is a work in progress, and it can be really, scary, which is why it feels so vulnerable. Like, I'm going to show you a real and true part of myself, whether it's a story, whether it's something that you feel, whether it's something you want to say. It can feel really vulnerable. But as you said, it's that edge. And the more we lean into it, the more we actually get stronger at our ability. As you said, it's a muscle, and the more we lean into it, the better we get, at that vulnerability piece. And so I can feel that in my heart as we're talking. Like, this is the real essence. If we want to be rising leaders in the world, in our businesses, we have to be authentic. Like, it's not a like, can I or can I not. It's an essential,
mm,
because soul leaders are expressing their true and authentic selves. So
mm,
I just wanted to make that connection and really talk about the connection piece, because it's just, that's what drives me. I want people to see who I really am. I want
mm,
people to connect with who I really am and what I care about and my values. But I can only do that if they can see it, which requires me to reveal it and be vulnerable enough
mm.
to do so. So,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I said we would share a couple of personal stories to give people examples of what this looks like in action. So, would you be willing to share your story first, Jenny?
I will, and I can actually feel I can feel it rising in my heart already. Like you were saying, you feel it in your heart. So it's very meaningful. I'll go back to the actual roots of the beginning of my business with this story, Lynn.
Mm,
I had been in a long-term holistic job for 2 decades, and then on the side, I was running, my soul work in the world as well. But I
mm,
remember that point where I knew I had to split from the long-term job, and which
mm,
actually it was still a life. Um, it was just something I was offering that I really loved, but I started to lose the love of it. And I remember that feeling of, I gotta leave. It's time to walk away. It's time to close the door. And the
mm,
feeling of shit, I gotta really get into the vulnerable edge of sharing my truth, my authentic truth on this with my husband, for example. And I do,
mm.
right? These moments, and this
Yes.
we're coming back to vulnerability and connection, like being authentic with myself in that moment. I knew, okay, this is something I gotta share. And I remember the sun was shining, I was sitting outside on the bench, and it was midsummer, and at that moment I felt my throat dry, I felt my tummy clench, I felt like the ground, I just wanted to swallow up, because it just felt like I'm sharing something so real that if he doesn't
Mm.
believe me, or if he doesn't support me,
Support.
yeah,
Mm,
support, Lynn, right? That I'm going
mm,
to have to, for example, this is the story, because I knew he would, but it was the story I was living, was
mm,
if he doesn't believe me or support me, I'm going to have to still live this life of dread, because I was at that edge of dread of, I gotta leave. I gotta start moving on, start getting into the roots of my beautiful, beautiful soul work.
mm.
And I just remember the words coming up out of my lips. They were like a release of something that I'd been holding in for probably a year.
Wow.
And the relief of the release of those words. And I remember looking into his eyes to see if he was going to believe me or going to trust me. And that was a huge vulnerable edge for me, because that's where my sensitivity, I mentioned it, and I think in our first session, where the level of feeling that moves through my body, it can be huge at times.
Yep.
But oh man, was I supported. Oh my
Mm,
God, was I believed. And I knew that new age was something it was necessary, right? This is just kind of one example of a deep edge where the words are there, you know, you have to step forward, or you swallow them up, Lynn, and you don't take the
yep.
step. You don't get into
Mm,
your soul essence. You don't do your soul work in the world. Every time we come to those edges, we got to be vulnerable. We got to
mm,
let the connection happen. And
mm,
it was so worth it. Like the foundation, the
mm,
strength of foundations that are there now are so huge. And I'm so
mm.
grateful to have the courage to have said to walk away and to, yeah, lean into that courage.
And it's just so amazing. Like what I'd love to kind of reflect and kind of hone in on there is that, you know, in that moment, because we've all had that experience of where like I know I need to make a change or I know I need to say something, you know, we will have swallowed it down. You know, I certainly know I did that a lot when I was younger.
Yeah.
And but it's that like if I'm going to be true to myself, like if I am going to be true to my heart, true to my soul's calling, I know I have to say this, I know I have to do this, I know I have to make this change. You know, so in that moment, like but the vulnerability of like, well, what comes next?
Mhm.
Right? Does rejection comes next? Does my marriage breakdown come next? Or whatever the irrational or you know the stories that we run are like that they're real in terms of in our head, right? So it's that like, am I willing to face you know, that thing that I fear in order to
Mhm.
step further into my own authenticity and my expression. Like, and this is the work that you know we do with people, but what we have to do as individuals in order to reach you know those new heights of expansion. And you know, the other thing I didn't say earlier, but like this, like when you do that, like as you said, like when you express yourself, it is a release. It's like an
Mhm.
incredible moment of like, oh my God, I did it, but it releases something that was being trapped inside you, as you said, and that feeling is just
Mhm.
amazing. Like, you know, that's the other, that's the reward after the like you walk the tightrope. There's the reward, right?
Yes.
In case you needed it, right? Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I
Mhm.
just know that it's going to be like so relatable in so many different ways, whether they're facing change or facing the fear of, you know, sharing their real heart's desire with a partner or, you know, another loved one. There are so many nuggets in there for us. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you.
Mm.
I would love to hear your story, Lynn. Like you have a huge vulnerable story as well to share. So, ooh, are you ready? I'd love to.
Ah,
Yeah.
I can laugh about it now, everyone. I can laugh about it now. Oh, goodness. So, uh, back last year, it was around May 2024. Um, I wanted to run an event. So, I don't know if for those of you who are watching and don't know, I went through breast cancer in 2019, and it was, you know, quite a big thing and an ordeal in my life. But when I went through it, and once I got out of it, I knew that there were so many things in there that I wanted to express that I had learned and really discovered about who we are and what gets in the way for us and like how we can live lives that are more authentic and heart led. And so, but I'd really struggled to share those stories in many different ways. And last year, I was really committed. I was like, I could feel like I knew the call, like we all have those callings inside us. And it was like, share the stories, share the stories, share the stories, share the stories. And I had been ignoring them ever since I like all of the treatment officials. Like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it because some of the things that I went through were so incredibly revealing, as in like I felt like I was ripped down to my essence and got to see parts of me. You know, I had to deal with shame and failure and so many different things. It was incredibly deep experience, and I was like, oh God, like how do I tell those stories and like be okay? And I really wanted to run this event and share some of the bigger stories, bigger lessons that I'd learned. And I was absolutely terrified.
Mhm.
I like I know I prepared the event, you know, I promoted it, people signed up for it. It was called Divine Inspiration. It was about, you know, how to utilize these lessons in your business that I'd learnt around trust and surrender and authenticity, all of those kind of things that we've been talking about. And I remember just going, "I don't know if I can do this." I was like, "I don't
Mhm.
know if I can reveal and show myself to this
Mhm.
level and be okay." And I was so afraid that I would share these stories and people would go, "Oh, well, don't be so self-indulgent, Lynn, and tell me those stories," right? I was like, "God, when are you gonna get to the stuff about, like, how this matters for my business," right? These are the things that are running through my head. Like, I was so afraid of being rejected, but it's like, it
Mhm.
was the core. I was revealing the core of me, and I was like, "If they don't like this, if they, like,
Mhm.
poo-poo on it, like, I don't know if I'm gonna be okay." And I was really lucky. Also, I knew that I would need support with this. So I actually worked with a coach and said, I want to tell my stories. I'm going to run an event to do it. I really need you to help me with this. And so
Mhm.
she walked with me, and I'm so grateful I gave myself that support, because there were a couple of times where I wanted to pull the pin. I had a
Mhm.
couple of near close panic attacks, and I was like, I was really terror. Like, it was a real terror response at the idea of being so vulnerable.
Mhm.
And, so eventually, like, I went and did it, and I think I got about, like 35 or 40 people sign up, and, I had people come along and or watch the replays. And this is the really interesting thing. I knew I would be okay. I knew people would have a great response, but my subconscious and my inner child, they were like, "No, no, no, no. I'm not
Mhm.
sure that's actually true," right? Which is why I was terrified and really panicking. I did the event, and one of the reasons I did it was because I couldn't anymore ignore the call to share them. I was like, "This is your hurdle, Lynn, that you need to move through in order to get where you wanna go, in order to get where your soul is calling you to move to." So I was hugely motivated. It really is one of the biggest hurdles I've had in my business since the beginning of my business. And I have to say, once I did it, it was like vulnerability wasn't a thing anymore,
Mhm.
because the response I got was almost overwhelming when
Mhm.
I shared some of the stories on my social posts, in the actual stories I shared in the event. Um, and it doesn't mean I don't still feel vulnerable, but in terms of my like that terrifying fear of it now is it has dissipated because the muscle got so much stronger. So, and that was it was a real shift in my business. It was a real opening of me and
Mhm.
sharing more of my deeper truth than I ever had before. And the thing
Mhm.
about doing that is people cannot mistake it.
Mhm.
When you, like, I'm getting tingles, like, when you
Mhm.
share your most authentic pieces, it has a resonance that people just can't ignore. And they just want to lean into you if it's a message that they care about, right?
Mhm.
They just want to lean in and go, "Oh my god, you said that and you shared that and you did that, and that
Mhm.
really hit me. Like, it really touches me." And so it's really a magical thing when we can be, authentic. So that was my on the ground experience, and I
Mhm.
know that, and I guess I really wanna share that because it can feel really terrifying. Like, I had almost panic attacks. I have had panic attacks, which is why I say almost, because it didn't go to that point.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, anyway, what were you hearing in that story, Jenny?
Oh, Lynn, so powerful. It's actually rippling through my body, when you are witness to somebody's story. It just feels like, oh, there's actually very few words because I'm still in the feeling. But what I will
Mm,
say is amazing to witness your courage, like amazing to witness you share the vulnerability, you share that you knew that you had to do it, you had to lean into
mm,
support, you had to ask for a
mm,
coach to walk you through it. So number one, you had to know what you needed, you had to ask for what you needed, you had to
mhm.
create the thing, right? It was like creating the container so that you could birth
Yeah.
this thing. And, we're here speaking about rising leadership and in new era. It's
Mm,
like bringing our voices forward. We got to know it. We got to ride that current of terror, right? And the
mm,
split also between the subconscious, yeah, the inner child, the subconscious, what's running our
yeah.
programs, our daily
Mm,
decisions, and also the knowing that I got to do this. I've got some I have impact to share, and it's going to involve
Yeah.
vulnerability, right?
Yes.
But the ripple effects are juicy. The ripple effects are actually
Mm,
life changing, and they're very inviting to other people to have the courage to lean into their own truth, their own authenticity. And this to me is rising leadership. It has all those qualities that we're speaking about today, Lynn. So it's really
mm,
beautiful. I'm really
mm,
appreciative of you sharing all the nuances, yeah, of your experience.
mm.
Yeah.
And the thing that you just said, like, it actually makes me want to cry, is other women showing up is what gave me the courage to share my truth and to continue doing so. So when we get to do that for other people, like, that makes it all worthwhile for me. I'm like, when someone reaches out and said, "Oh,
Mm,
you've made me think about what could I share, or where is that for me?" And that's this is how we help each other rise, right? We keep stepping forward, and for, might be I did that for somebody else is going to do something. I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, that's
mm,
encouraged me, and I feel brave enough now to go and do that. So it's a beautiful, as you say, the impact ripples, is just,
mm,
that's what, and I didn't realize that until you said it, and I could feel it really land. I was like, wow, it's just a beautiful thing when we get to do that for each other, in
mm.
whatever fashion, that might be. So
Yeah.
now you did touch on one thing then that we need to finish out on. So we're not done
Mm,
yet if we don't speak about this thing called courage.
mm.
So I'd love to hear, like, we talked a little bit about this before we started recording today. So what do you think about when you think about courage?
Oh, when I think about courage, it's that on the edge living. It's that I know there's a new edge kind of expanding within me. And
Mm,
to live into courage, we have to step forward. We have to allow our heart to begin to lead, like cur heart. It's like the Latin root, like of wholeheartedness. So bringing our whole hearts
mm,
forward, not just part of us, or not just the old part, because we're here evolving and rising, right? We're here like rippling new
yeah.
information out into the world.
Mm,
So for me, courage is now not having the mind lead, because we're moving from the mind to the heart and allowing the heart's intelligence to drive us forward. And with that, it's like, Lynn, we've no other option but be on that edge. We've no other option but not know what the result is going to be. It's not
mm,
knowing. So we'll speak about it another time, but it's really leaning into a trust in the unknown, right? And that
yeah.
we will be caught, or we will catch ourselves, or something new is going to birth. But courage to me is the new paradigm way of leading, like having courage of heart
Mm,
and having the authenticity and the vulnerability all interlinked. Yeah. If we don't have all three
absolutely.
together, right, there's parts and bits of us going to be missing. So we're
Mm,
moving forward wholeheartedly in wholeness, right? So
mm,
yeah, that's kind of what's
love
coming
that.
as you're speaking. Yeah.
Beautiful. And the only thing I would add to that is what it isn't, so just to be really kind of clear is, because we talked about this and I completely agree. Courage is leaning into your edge, like the zone of being uncomfortable. But
Mm,
what it isn't is jumping to the other side of that, where you are overwhelmed and you
mm,
enter into collapse because that's too much, right? So it's
mm,
not pushing past your capacity or your ability. It's not overwhelming your nervous system so you do end up going into collapse. It's
mm,
not That's not what we're talking about. That's
mm,
potentially like old way of doing things, like you push
mm,
through, you go way beyond what your actual capacity is. That's not what we're talking about. We're finding your edge and leaning into it in terms of being courageous. So I
mm,
just wanted to add that as well, because that's something I had to unlearn. Like, I had to go, I'm not doing good enough if I'm not pushing past this barrier. I was like, oh, it's not enough. But then I
mm.
would just end up collapsing, and like it would anyway. I have learned this one, my friends. I have learned it. So find the edge, lean into it. is what we mean by being courageous.
Mm.
And
I love that,
I
Lynn.
hope,
Thanks.
yeah, and I hope a lot of people find like relief in that, like the
Yeah.
permission to go, oh, I don't have to like push beyond my boundaries. No, you don't. You just have
No,
to lean
absolutely.
into them.
It's so true. I love that you brought that in. I'd forgotten that piece. And I sometimes work with millimeter by millimeter, not just step, depending on where people's
Right.
nervous systems are.
Yes.
When you bring in that millimeter, it's like, that big exhale comes in, right?
Yes.
So I think it's working with all of our systems moving forward. Yeah,
Yes.
every part. Yeah.
Yes. Honoring each and every part of us. Yes, that's right. Oh, love that. Beautiful. Okay, so we have today been talking about some of the fundamental qualities that we need to be cultivating as rising leaders. And the first one we talked about today was authenticity. So, expressing our real self, our inner truth, our heart's desires, like really getting connected to the essence of ourselves, and expressing that into the world. And then we talked about, of course, you know, you can't really be authentic without also being vulnerable on a regular basis, right? So that one's about like really allowing ourselves to be in that vulnerability, getting support if we need it, you know, understanding it's part of the journey, building the muscle that allows us to not be so terrified of vulnerability and actually recognize that it is the route, the fastest path to connection with
Mhm.
ourselves and with other people and with our audiences, like the people we are here to serve. So,
Mhm.
vulnerability has such power. And then the last one we just talked about was in order to do both of those things, we need to be courageous. We need to be able to step into our edge, you know, find that uncomfortableness just outside our comfort zone and really lean into it so that we can continue expanding both our authenticity, our capacity, and also what we're here doing in the world. So, is there anything else you would add to those that little recap there, Jenny, of the three pieces we've been talking about today?
Oh, Lynn, no, I've been soaking up what you've just shared. I was like, did we just speak about all of that? And one thing I will say about Lynn is her phenomenal capacity to dissect things. I just love it. Lynn, I have nothing to add. Absolutely. You nailed it.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Just as a little recap, we're going to keep doing a couple more of these, we've decided, because there are more qualities we want to share with you, some more fundamental pieces that we know are essential to the path of the rising leader. So please follow us on socials. Jenny is at Inspiritus Life
Mhm.
on Instagram
On
and Facebook.
Yep.
Mhm. And you can find me at Lynn Hord Joy on Facebook and Lynn Hord Hord on Instagram. Just search and you'll find us anyway. And you'll also probably be watching this on YouTube or Facebook, and it's also available there as well. So please follow us if you'd like more inspiration and ideas and deep dives into what does it mean to be a rising leader. And we would really cherish hearing from you if something here has really landed with you, or you have questions for us. We would love to hear them. They might inspire another video conversation. I don't know what we're calling it. So chat.
Collaborative
Exactly.
chat.
Collaborative chat. There we go. Brilliant. All right. Thank you so much, Jenny, for your beautiful presence and all that you have shared and your story today. So thank you for being here with me and us.
Thank you, Lynn, for leaning in and for just sharing all your amazing, amazing information. Juicy, juicy, juicy.
It is. This is another juicy one, my friend. All right. Thanks, everyone. Let us know how this lands, and we will see you here again soon for another installment. All right. Bye for now. Bye.